This video is brought to you in collaboration with WoWhead.com. Hello everyone! Last week we did a bit of speculation with the delicious Shadowlands lore, specifically on the book Enemy Infiltration Preface and the implications for the cosmic war of Warcraft. But more voice lines and hints, they have been dropped. The Primus, he left us a rather interesting message. Time to grab the information together and see what we can come up with. Now, keep in mind, we are going to be talking about Shadowlands lore, so spoilers ahead. And hopefully, you have caught my video from 2 months ago, which is called The Story of the Pantheon of Death, in which we speculate on the idea of the Shadowlands as we see it right now, that it is not the way it used to be or even supposed to be. The domain itself, the Shadowlands, it is the afterlife in Warcraft, but the zones, Bastion, Maldraxxus, Ardenweald and Revendreth, they seem to have been shaped and designed, similar to how the Pantheon shaped and designed Azeroth for their purpose. In the Shadowlands, part of their purpose is to gather Anima from the souls and use that power to keep the jailer imprisoned. But why? Why is this beautiful bald man locked away within the maw? Well, the missing Primus has some voice files talking about Zovaal the Jailer.
I am the Primus. Your presence within my sanctum means a darkness has fallen upon Maldraxxus and all the realms of death. Ages ago, the Eternal Ones punished our brother Zovaal for his treachery. He was bound within the inescapable maw to be forevermore its jailer. Now I fear that Zovaal did not act alone. I suspect he had ancient allies, and will seek to win others to his cause. That you are hearing this message means my suspicions proved true. Zovaal has forged his chains into a weapon and brought about my defeat. There is but one hope to save the Shadowlands. The Eternal Ones must stand together once more before the jailer escapes the maw. Bring my warning to the Archon, the Winter Queen, and the Sire. They must see to our defenses. Do not let Zovaal reach the sepulchre. The Arbiter is the final key. Protect her, or all is lost.
Zovaal is the jailer's name, someone that the Primus calls his brother, so potentially part of what was described as a sort of pantheon of death. The Archon in Bastion, the Primus in Maldraxxus, the Winter Queen in Ardenweald, and Sire Denathrius in Revendreth, instead of the Pantheon of Death, which is a term that they compared them with. Here they're called the Eternal Ones. They rule the zones, and in some cases they've outright stated to have shaped or created the zones. The Dungeon Journal, it also confirms that they are the Eternal Ones. As Sire Denathrius, he stood amongst the Eternal Ones who rule the realms of death. Then the Arbiter, that is the one that hangs out in Oribos, isn't doing too great right now, but she's supposed to judge the souls to determine in which one of the infinite realms of the Shadowlands that they belong in. So according to the Primus, Zovaal did some kind of treachery, bad enough for them to lock him away within the inescapable maw and forever be its jailer. The parallels to the Dark Titan Sargeras being imprisoned by the Pantheon, they're easily drawn. But you do have to wonder what happened to the irredeemable souls before Zovaal was kicked down in there. Were they just kicked into the maw without a jailer? Did the maw never exist before they needed a prison? Either way, in the maw he went, and we know from the Winter Queen that they've been using Anima, experience that the souls that journey to the Shadowlands bring with them. They've been using that to keep him locked in there. I really wonder if that's the whole reason why they shaped the Shadowlands to begin with. Imagine Zovaal, this super powerful being, betraying them, and now they need to figure out a way to contain him. Did they perhaps take up the charge to make this happen by guiding the souls in a specific way? By setting up a system that sorts you like a sorting hat, aimed at stripping you from as much anima as possible, just so that Zovaal stays locked in the maw, a machine of death if you will. Perhaps. But now, somewhere in the Legion time periods, this machine of death got broken, and instead of all those souls being sorted, they're now all just going directly to the maw, regardless of where they belong. We still don't know for certain what moment caused this. Perhaps there were multiple moments in Legion, who knows? But the recent Ardenweald short, it does shows us Ursak arriving in Ardenweald. This potentially places the timeline somewhere after the Emerald Nightmare raid. No more souls coming in means that there's no more anima to be farmed, and there's a bit of a drought, which causes problems for the zones themselves, and of course the containment of Zovaal. The Eternal Ones must stand together once more before the jailer escapes the maw. Do not let Zovaal reach the sepulchre. The Arbiter is the final key. Protect her, or all is lost. Now, sepulchre, that had me mighty curious, and I highly doubt that they're talking about the sepulchre within Silverpine Forest. The Dutch in me then had to look for the meaning of the word, which apparently means like a tomb, a place where a dead person is laid or buried. Then a shout out to Arashi on my Discord, who pointed out that there's a sepulchre of knowledge right here in Maldraxxus. This is a spot where they keep knowledge of war and machines of destruction. For ages untold, Maldraxxus has stood for the defense of the Shadowlands. That's quite a bit of knowledge that they earned. Knowledge that must be protected from those who would turn it against the Shadowlands. Can't imagine that the jailer is a big fan of the Shadowlands at this point, so it might simply be this location. It might be something else. The Arbiter being the final key. That might just be the last line that Zovaal would have to cross in order to complete his escape. Although, there is this really cool image that floats around the internet. It has the jailer fused together with the Arbiter, as if they're two parts now separated. I love this idea as well, but who knows? We do of course need to keep in mind that this information is coming from the Primus, one of the Eternal Ones that decided to imprison the jailer. He is a master strategist and tactician, nigh unbeatable on the field of battle. The Primus is a pretty clever one, could foresee certain possibilities, certain events from happening, which is why he left these recorded messages behind. But who is to say that their version of events is the truth? Who knows what actually went down between Zovaal and the others? If we look at the Spires of Ascension dungeon, then we learn that Devils, she had a little chat with the jailer and decided to stand at his side. Devils, that's the one from the Ufer short, the one that helped him throw Arthas into the maw and realize that their path is flawed, that they serve a lie. And so I listened to the jailer's words, and I learned of the great injustice that you and the others thrust upon him. And upon us all. He seeks to free us from the prison that we have built for ourselves. And for that, he has earned my loyalty. There's more to the motivation and the story than given at first glance. Now, I'm not saying that the jailer is going to ultimately be the good guy. I'm just hoping that there's more to it than this prime evil that wants to consume the universe, that's trying to break free from its prison, and we have to stop it, cause, well, we just dealt with that. Now I fear that Zovaal did not act alone. I suspect he had ancient allies and will seek to win others to his cause. That you are hearing this message means that my suspicions prove true. Zovaal has forged his chains into a weapon and brought about my defeat. A treachery with ancient allies. Who knows who those might be. But it is safe to say that Zovaal has made some friends, even amongst the Eternal Ones. In the Shadowlands' darkest hour, Sire Denathrius has betrayed his sacred duty and is in league with the jailer, stockpiling and sending a whole bunch of anima right down into the maw.
The other realms would squander our most precious resource. That won't do. Rest assured, this anima will serve a higher purpose.
Based on last week's speculation regarding Sire Denathrius and the connection to the Dreadlords, you have to wonder if that's linked to Zovaal forging his chains into a weapon. Now, the connection between the design of the jailer, the runes on Frostmourne, and the Helm of Domination, they were quickly spotted. The Lich King's origin from the Chronicles is not to be found in the realm of death, rather in the realm of disorder. It was Kil'jaeden that tortured the spirit of the Orc Ner'zhul for failing him, for trying to betray him, until Ner'zhul's sanity cracked and he begged for death. Kil'jaeden would grant it, but only if the Orc would serve as the Legion's new weapon, passing the Orc spirit through death and then bringing it back as a spectral entity. The Orc's consciousness expanded 1,000-fold, granting him extraordinary psychic powers. The Dreadlords then bound his disembodied spirit to a specifically crafted set of armor and a mighty rune blade called Frostmourne. These items were locked in a diamond hard block of ice to imprison Ner'zhul, and then the story of the Lich King played out. Ner'zhul not actually wanting to serve the Legion. Under the eyes of the Dreadlords, he schemed against them, leading to the Legion's defeat on Azeroth. Arthas would merge with him until his defeat at the end of Wrath of the Lich King. Then it was Bolvar Fordragon that picked up the crown and the job of the Jailer of the Damned, as there must always be a Lich King. Sylvanas then enters the stage and shatters the helmet at the top of Icecrown, opening up the path into the Shadowlands. Now, during his time as Jailer.
When the helm rested upon my head, it took all my will to keep its insidious power in check. Many times, I nearly faltered. I could sense a dark presence at the edge of my consciousness. Not Arthas, not Ner'zhul. Something else. It is that very presence I sense lurking beyond the shattered sky above. I dare not travel with you. Even free of the helm, I fear I would become bound to the will of its true master.
So, how come the Jailer and the armor are so connected, when it was the Dreadlords that used it for Kil'jaeden to craft a new weapon for the Legion? Well, if these Dreadlords are truly part of this massive, overarching scheme connected to Denathrius, and Denathrius is working for the Jailer, the potential exists that all of this was calculated. We're going to find out more about Domination Gear, as we're going to craft our legendaries with the Rune Carver. This is a being imprisoned in the Tower of Torghast that has lost his memories. We're all kind of assuming that this Rune Carver is actually the missing Primus. But again, like most of this is, it's all speculation. But since Bolvar mentions that the Jailer is the true master of the helmet, his chains turn into a weapon. An idea would be that this Domination Gear, that it was crafted to contain the awesome powers of the Jailer. The Dreadlords then yoinking it off of him to then present it to Kil'jaeden, who in turn used it to make the Lich King, and all the events that followed, events that impacted the Shadowlands, like Uther's soul being scarred, Sylvanas being brought back as a Banshee, all those things, because the Lich King was there. The one thing that I can't really answer though, that would be how. If the Maw is this inescapable realm, then how did the Dreadlords manage to get the armor out of there? Did they pick it up, suicide themselves, and then respawn in the Twisting Nether? Is that how it worked? I have no idea.
You hear the voice of the Dark Lord.
Besides Denathrius, several others have also decided to join this Jailer covenant. Amongst them, there's Kel'Thuzad, Sylvanas, Devils that I mentioned, Helya, and then there is Muzala, Loa of Death. Only small hints of its presence are shadowed throughout Azeroth. A much more prominent role later in the Traveler series. This is the one that elevated Bwonsamdi from a troll priest to, well, the Bwonsamdi as we know him as today. He is his boss, but apparently Muzala has been quite busy.
It be Muzala who brought Helya to the Jailer's side. Struck a deal for old Odin's eye, and made the Banshee war chief with a whisper.
Once upon a time, Odin got really upset that the other keepers decided to empower proto-dragons into the dragon aspects to aid them in defending Azeroth. He stomped his feet and proclaimed that only the mighty Titan forts could be trusted to defend the world. The other keepers, they ignored him. They went on with their plans anyways. So Odin had Helya lift a piece of Ulduar into the sky and turned it into the Halls of Valor. The Vraiku that would die a worthy death in battle. They would have their spirits brought to his halls and become mighty Valajar. Odin wanted to mess with the machine of death in the Shadowlands, since if he took these souls and then turned them into Valajar, then they wouldn't be sent over to be farmed for Anima. Were there still enough other souls arriving in the Shadowlands to keep the Jailer properly contained? Or was this a small dent in what contained him? Was this also why the Dreadlords experimented with necromancy, like yoinking souls out of the Shadowlands? Who knows, but there was just one tiny problem though. Odin had no way of grabbing those souls upon death. So Helya and Odin, they did a little ritual to see into the Shadowlands. In his magical circle, a great spirit appeared, who asked him, "What will you give to peer beyond the veil of this world?" Wise Odin figured that he had 2 eyes and only needed one. So he plopped one out and he gave it away. The spirit closed his eye and swallowed it whole, and great Odin saw what he needed to see. But of course, the question becomes, if he was able to see into the Shadowlands, did this action, as we now know with the spirit of Muzala, and by extension the jailer, did that grant them sight into the realm of the living as well? Now Odin then figured out that it was going to need some Valkyr to ferry those souls. He forced the job upon Helya. Helya was not down with this and eventually broke free from his control, dove down, making her own domain of Helheim. Another ally for Muzala to bring to the jailer's side. You might recall how in Legion, the Banshee Queen and Helya, they had a little bargain going on. With the use of the Soul Cage, Sylvanas could enslave Aegir, obtain the power to create more Valkyr. Unfortunately, Greymane and the Alliance, they prevented those plans by shattering the cage. And then there's that final line about making Sylvanas the war chief.
The spirit have granted me clarity, a vision. They whisper a name.
It was Muzala who whispered to Vol'jin on his deathbed, which then placed the Banshee Queen in control of the Horde, which caused that massive war and loss of life that we saw go down in Battle for Azeroth. All of that adding more and more souls to the Maw, more and more power to the jailer and their covenants, more and more power to Sylvanas.
The Horde is nothing!
There's one last thing that I really want to talk about before we wrap up the video, which is related to the Overshort and the overarching story with Sylvanas. When Arthas died at the top of Icecrown, Sylvanas figured that her mission for vengeance was done. She decided to throw herself to the Serenite spikes down below, ending her undead life. Instead of the eternal bliss that she had felt the first time she had died, she ended up in Hell, or the Maw most likely, a realm of eternal torment. This is when she got in touch with the jailer, and even Arthas' spirit was there. But in the grand landscape of all the world's suffering, all the evils of the infinite, the Lich King was insignificant. Back then, it felt like hell was a little bit extreme for Sylvanas, but apparently her deeds to claim vengeance, it had earned her a ticket there. And then Arthas, well, he did become the Lich King after all. But now, with the Overshort, we know that Arthas was never judged. The Arbiter did not gaze upon his soul. Uther, he just flung him directly into the Maw. And that opens up the idea of souls first being offered a chance at redemption within Revendreth. There, they could pay for their sins, if they can. And if they still ultimately refuse, then they get kicked down into the Maw. So what of Sylvanas? There was no mention of spending time in Revendreth at all. She too just ended up directly in the realm of torment, and you gotta wonder why. It could simply be because the Valkyr manipulated her, and they did to her what Uther did to Arthas. Or maybe it was Uther's actions that allowed the jailer to get his hands on Sylvanas. Perhaps this hell, the whole reason why she kept on pushing ever since the Cataclysm, that was never meant to be a thing. It's not impossible to imagine that the sweet words of Zovaal, the choice between eternal torment or ripping the Shadowlands apart, that is what pushed her into this path. Now, that doesn't make what she did right, of course, but it does add depth to what's been going on. It adds depth to the motivation. And that's going by the idea that all souls are given a chance to pay for their sins. That all souls first go to Revendreth, and then if they fail there, they go into the Maw. But that's not a certainty. For all we know, Sylvanas was judged by the Arbiter, was deemed to be completely without redemption and kicked down into the Maw. Imagine for someone like her, the Shadowlands being this machine that sorts you into location, paying for sins in your life. Imagine ending up in the Maw, this great evil power that wants to break out. There are many different reasons as to why Sylvanas wants to destroy the Shadowlands, or why she teamed up with the jailer. There's a lot of things to consider here, but to wrap it all up, to wrap the things up that we talked about today, to put that together, there's been this massive overarching plot being pushed from the Shadowlands for a really, really long time. Zovaal wants to break out, and while from the WoW website, he's described as this ancient evil that cannot be allowed to break free or all reality will be consumed. At the same time, the Maw is this mysterious place where no one ever leaves. He'd been placed there by the Eternal Ones, and while some might agree with Zovaal and stand on his side, add more depth to motivation and story, ultimately, I do believe that we'll have to deal with him. Maybe we're gonna give him back his helmet, make someone else his jailer. If they do mirror Wrath the Lich King, where around nearly every corner the Lich King was taunting us and he was the end guy, the end boss of the expansion, then the jailer, in this turnaround, He's our end guy. Armor and weapons are linked to the jailer that have made their way to Azeroth, causing the story of the Lich King. Uther's soul got scarred by Frostmourne, a pain that made its way into Bastion. It pushed devils in her beliefs of the path being flawed, and Arthas directly flung into the Maw. Kel'Thuzad was turned into a Lich with the use of the Sunwell, now an ally of the jailer, trying to figure out how to get him out of the Maw. The loss of the Sunwell placed Kil'Thuz on a path into the hands of Kil'jaeden and the Legion. Then he died, went to the Shadowlands, been used by Denathrius. Sylvanas, she tried to save her home from the Scourge and paid the ultimate price. Then brought back as a Banshee, and she became the Banshee Queen. Her plans for vengeance were ultimately a success. Suicide followed, where she got in touch with the jailer. Her position as war chief allowed her to send more souls to the Maw, until ultimately the Helm of Domination was shattered and the sky opened up. I'm sure that if we think long enough and bring together more pieces of the puzzle, that more connections can be made to the plans of the jailer. But I'll leave you with this for now. There is one question that's been bugging me though, one thing that seems to be missing from all of this, and quite a few have asked me what is up. Where is Ner'zhul? Is he dead? Is he still in the helmets? Is he in the Shadowlands somewhere? What did they do with Ner'zhul? And I have no idea. Perhaps time is going to tell, but this was a lot of fun to deep dive into. A small message from the Primus, it clears up quite a bit, and yet it also raises so many more questions. I'm super excited to see more of the story revealed. But for now, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Say that you're looking for more details on all the things that we talked about today, then check out the delayed WoW article in the description down below. You could also decide to subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, see ya!